All right, welcome to the Explainer from Notebook Summaries. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible history of a place they call the Roof of the World. So, what's the story of the Roof of the World? Well, it's this incredible saga of a warrior empire that completely transforms into a global spiritual hub. It's a journey that really shapes its identity even today. So, let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to break this down into 5 key eras. This will help us connect the dots and really see how Tibet's unique past has so profoundly shaped its present. So let's start at the beginning. Picture this. It's the 7th century, and in the Yarling Valley, something big is happening. A bunch of tribes come together. And this isn't just about creating a new kingdom. No, this is the start of an empire that would soon rule over the entire roof of the world. You know, what's just incredible here is how fast this all happened. The Tibetan Empire's rise was absolutely meteoric. I mean, in just a couple of centuries, they didn't just unify this massive territory, they also created their own written language, the foundation of their whole culture. But, and this is a big but, that super fast expansion kind of planted the seeds for its own downfall, kicking off a civil war that would completely change Tibet's path. So, the empire collapses, right? And that leaves this huge power vacuum. Now, you'd think a new king or another dynasty would step in to fill it, but no. Instead, what fills that void is the growing influence of Buddhist masters. And this right here fundamentally changes everything for Tibetan civilization. And this slide, it just perfectly illustrates this wild paradox. On one hand, you've got political chaos, warlords carving up the land. But on the other hand, you have this incredible spiritual and cultural boom. The so-called era of fragmentation actually leads to a renaissance, with new schools of thought popping up and religious art just flourishing. It really cements Tibet's identity as a beacon of Buddhism in Asia. Okay, so while Tibet is having this internal spiritual transformation, a new, huge power is rising just to the north, the Mongols. And their arrival isn't just going to influence Tibet, it's going to completely reshape its political destiny all over again. This is where we get this really unique idea. The priest-patron relationship, or Choyan. And you gotta understand, this was a brilliant political move. It's basically a symbiotic partnership. A powerful warrior king, the patron, protects the spiritual leader, the priest, and in return, he gets religious legitimacy. This model, which they first set up with the Mongols, would become the absolute cornerstone of Tibetan foreign policy for centuries. So under the Yin dynasty, you get this really interesting power-sharing deal. It's a kind of dual rule. See, while Tibet was technically part of the massive Mongol Empire, it was the Sakya Lamas who were really holding the reins of power back home. This clever setup allowed Tibet to navigate the tricky world of imperial politics while making sure its own unique culture and traditions could keep on thriving. All right, let's jump to the next chapter here. As the Mongol power starts to fade, local Tibetan rule makes a comeback, and a brand new, super powerful institution, the Dalai Lama, starts to take shape, which, you guessed it, leads to a whole new imperial relationship. You know, the rise of the Dalai Lamas is a masterclass in strategic alliances. By teaming up with powerful Mongol patrons, the Gelug school managed to consolidate its power and set up a whole new government, the Ganden Phodrang, with the Dalai Lama as the top dog. This was a totally new era for Tibet, with one leader holding both spiritual and political authority. But then, the Qing dynasty shows up, and this marks a major turning point in Tibet's relationship with its big neighbors. The Qing weren't content to just be patrons anymore. Nope, they wanted direct control. They wanted to transform Tibet from a semi-autonomous state into a full-blown part of their empire. And a big part of making this official was giving it a name. The Qing started calling the region Shizang, really cementing its place within their imperial system. They also put their own officials, called ambans, in Lhasa to oversee things and command a military garrison. This really solidified Qing authority on the ground. So fast forward to 1912. The Qing dynasty collapses. This doesn't just end imperial rule in China, it kicks off a totally new and honestly a very contentious era for Tibet. It really sets the stage for all the conflicts of the 20th century. So when the Qing dynasty fell, it created this window of opportunity for Tibet. And the 13th Dalai Lama, he seized that moment. He declared Tibet's independence, and this kicked off what you might call a brief golden age of self-rule. For almost 4 decades, Tibet was basically its own master, this remote kind of mysterious kingdom hidden away from the rest of the world. But that period of autonomy came to a sudden, abrupt end in 1950. The People's Liberation Army from the newly formed People's Republic of China marched into the region and defeated the small Tibetan army. This led to the 1951 17-point agreement, which was a document that formalized China's sovereignty over Tibet. The 1959 uprising, well, it was a desperate gamble for freedom. But the truth is, the poorly armed Tibetan resistance was just no match for the might of the People's Liberation Army. The crackdown that followed was brutal, and it forced the 14th Dalai Lama to flee into exile, leaving his people to face a really uncertain future. What happened to Tibet's monasteries in the years that followed was just a cultural cataclysm. We're talking about over 6,000 of them. And you have to remember, these weren't just buildings for worship. They were the centers of learning, of art, of medicine. They were basically the libraries of 1,000 years of Tibetan civilization. Their destruction was a devastating blow to a unique and vibrant culture. So where does that leave us today? Well, the historical narrative itself is, as you can imagine, highly contested. The People's Republic of China, for its part, points to its investments in infrastructure and education, arguing that it replaced an old feudal system with a modern state. But then, on the other side, critics and exile groups point to the loss of autonomy, to human rights issues, and to what they see as the erosion of Tibetan culture and religion, like restrictions on religious practices. And these two very different perspectives really define the ongoing debate. So when you look back, it's an incredible journey. From an ancient empire in Central Asia to a global spiritual center, and now a modern autonomous region within the PRC. Tibet's story is just a powerful tale of identity, of resilience, and of profound change that is literally still unfolding. Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. Definitely check out our South Asia history playlist for more deep dives into the region. And of course, remember to subscribe to Notebook Summaries for more content like this. We'll see you next time.